Now that sunsetting is dead and many of the fan favorite weapons have come back, I thought it'd be a good time to make a list of the top 10 sunset weapons that are missing from Destiny 2. Though I'd love to see more new weapons added to the game, these 10 sunset weapons are unique and I think all players should have the chance to experience them. I'm Above, and if you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now let's get into it. Before we dive into the top 10, I want to take a moment to thank Outplayed for sponsoring today's video. Outplayed is free recording software that can record in the output quality of your choosing and has the ability to integrate with popular supported titles like Apex Legends, Valorant, and Overwatch 2, where it can highlight your kills, assists, and even funny deaths that can be edited and shared to social media all in one place. It's super easy to use, and you can download it now using my link in the description below. Thank you again to Outplayed for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the list. Let's start by setting a few ground rules. Number 1, this list excludes former raid weapons. We're running out of D1 raids to bring back, which most likely means that vaulted D2 raids will make their return in the near future, and with them will come their raid weapons. So for now, we're gonna leave these off the list. Number 2, this list also excludes pinnacle weapons with perks that kinda cause sunsetting in the first place. With that said, not all pinnacle perks were game breaking, and you may just see some of them on this list. And number 3, sunset weapons have returned with updated loot pools, so I had some fun and took some potential perk combinations into account that would make them extremely valuable in today's sandbox. Starting with our honorable mentions, these are fan favorite weapons that were some of the best in the game at the time. And though they're great, they fall just outside of the top 10 because they either have better alternatives in the current sandbox or their weapon archetypes just don't quite suit the meta at the moment. First up, we have the Hammerhead. This machine gun was one of the best ad clear weapons in Destiny at the time. It looked incredible, was unbelievably stable in PvP, and had such a badass sound. Unfortunately for Hammerhead, the commemoration and corrective measure now exist. Reconstruction and Firefly are both so good that it'd be tough for the Hammerhead to compete. Our second honorable mention goes to Breachlight. This aggressive burst sidearm not only had high damage output, it also had fantastic perk combinations to go along with it. My go-to role was Demolitionist in Column 3 and either Multi-Kill Clip or Vorpal in Column 4. The only downside to this weapon is the fact that sidearms can be pretty difficult to use in endgame content like Grandmaster Nightfalls and Master Raids. You can, but there are usually better options, which is why it doesn't quite make the list. Alright, now on to the list. At number 10, we have Patron of Lost Causes. This 200 RPM scout rifle was one of my favorite weapons in the game prior to being sunset. It had fantastic sights and top tier perks in rapid hit and explosive payload, but this weapon never got its chance to shine prior to being sunset because scouts were pretty bad at the time. But now that scouts have been buffed several times at this point, it would be a top tier option in today's sandbox. And though the Night Watch has essentially replaced it, Patron doesn't make your ears bleed like the Night Watch does. Like many of the Dawn weapons, it just felt fantastic to use, but comes in a bit lower on the list due to alternative options in the game at the moment. With that said, if it were to come back, Patron would absolutely be my go-to scout rifle. At number 9, we have Martyr's Retribution. This was the first waveframe grenade launcher ever made, paving the way for weapons like Forbearance and Explosive Personality. It could roll with perks like Demolitionist and Rampage, and had the ability to proc Warmind cells prior to their nerf. This weapon comes in at number 9, however, because as it stands right now, it would have to compete with perks like Chain Reaction and Land Tank in the current meta. So if it returns, it would need a serious facelift just like the Mida Mini tool did. They'd need to give it something crazy to stand out from the other waveframes. Maybe something like, I don't know, Incandescent? Now you're probably thinking, there's no way that they do that. But I mean, Forbearance has Chain Reaction, doesn't it? So why not give Martyrs Incandescent and give Forbearance a run for its money? This change would instantly make it a god tier weapon for the current sandbox and would be a ton of fun to play around with. At number 8, we have an auto rifle that was head and shoulders above the rest. A pinnacle weapon that single-handedly made this weapon archetype usable during the Forsaken era. The Breakneck was a 450 RPM auto rifle that came with a unique perk by the name of Onslaught. As you gained rampage stacks, it would simultaneously ramp up the rate of fire up to 720 RPM, which was nearly double the weapon's base fire rate. When fully spun up, this thing was absolutely ridiculous for ad clear and could melt yellow bars with ease. Onslaught was the ideal pinnacle perk because though it was strong, it also was conditional, so it wasn't game breaking. This weapon would be a welcome addition to today's sandbox, especially since auto rifles are pretty underused at the moment. 7th on the list goes to Bygones, a fan favorite 390 RPM pulse rifle from the Forsaken expansion. This is regarded as one of the best pulse rifles ever because of its ability to slay in both PvE and PvP. This weapon just felt incredible to use. It was great for dueling in PvP because it had amazing sights and what seemed like zero recoil, with perks like Outlaw and Kill Clip that could shine anywhere in the game. It wasn't flashy, but it did everything well and had one of the most satisfying sounds of any weapon in Destiny, period. Seeing that PvP is very much in a pulse rifle meta at the moment, Bygones would be another great option alongside the likes of Peace of Mind and the BXR Battler. Bygones was so good that I grinded Gambit to get one, and that alone should tell you just how good this weapon was. Coming in at number 6, we have Line in the Sand. Yeah, I know, another linear fusion rifle, but hear me out. This weapon was introduced during the Season of Dawn, and just like Patron of Lost Causes, it never got its chance to shine. Arc 3.0 has some pretty insane builds, and the fact that you can use this and proc Font of Might with a weapon like Line of Sand would be extremely viable in endgame content, especially with builds like these Storm Grenade Titans with Heart of Inmost Light. And though Storm Chaser is good, the rate of fire nerf has definitely affected its usage a bit, which is why I think Line in the Sand would be another great option to have. It could roll with rapid hit and firing line, and just like all of the Dawn weapons, it had amazing sights, unlike some recent additions to the game. Kicking off our top 5, we have the Sole Survivor. This 90 RPM sniper rifle came from the Reckoning and dropped with some of the best perks we've ever seen on a sniper rifle, period. It could drop with both firing line and 4th times the charm, and when you paired this with extended mag, it could shoot 11 consecutive bullets without reloading. This would not only compete with some of the best snipers in the game, it would also fill a major hole in the current Destiny sandbox. We have just 4 arc sniper rifles in the game at the moment, none of which are used very often in endgame content. And though we may be getting a new option in Festival of the Lost, it'll be hard to beat the Sole Survivor's perk pool, which is why it would be such a welcome addition. At number 4, we have a pulse rifle that was actually the first of its kind, one that became highly popular because of its high damage and extremely high range. Go Figure was an aggressive burst pulse rifle that shot 4 bullets at a time, truly living up to their aggressive burst name. This is one of the rarest weapon archetypes in the entire game, with just 2 that haven't been sunset, those being the Insidious and Sacred Provenance. This would not only be a great weapon to bring back out of sandbox necessity, it would also be a PvE monster. And while we're at it, bring back the Blast Furnace as well, since it was essentially a juiced up version of the same gun. After all, it could roll a 100 range stat without the masterwork, which made it feel so good to use. These hard-hitting pulses are great for GMs and master raid content, and I'd love to have more options available to all players. At number 3, we have the Hush. For those who aren't familiar, this solar adaptive frame bow was a pinnacle weapon available during the Season of Opulence, and single-handedly made me fall in love with bows in endgame content. Its pinnacle perk, Archer's Gambit, gave a 50% draw speed bonus bonus for 7 seconds and could be refreshed with each hipfire precision hit. This meant that you could have the damage of a precision frame bow, which defaults to a 760 draw time, and fire it at a sub 350 draw time, which is faster than any bow in the game by far. Now imagine this came back as a Grandmaster Nightfall reward and dropped with perks like Explosive Head or Incandescent to pair with Archer's Gambit. This thing would be insane and would give the GM playlist loot pool a much needed facelift. At number 2, we have one of the most unique weapons ever made, a hand cannon that was introduced during the Black Armory expansion in the Kindled Orchid. What made this weapon special was the fact that it was just the second primary weapon ever to drop with 2 true damage perks. The curated roll dropped with both Rampage and Kill Clip and could 2-tap Guardians in PvP. It also slayed on the PvE side of the game and would fill a much needed hole in the current sandbox. In fact, there are just 3 void hand cannons in the entire game at the moment, none of which are super meta for the PvE side of Destiny. With weapons like Fatebringer and Zali's Bane, it's tough for any of these to get playtime, especially when those hand cannons have double damage perks just like the Kindled Orchid did. So if it came back, it would give us a solid void hand cannon option that could compete with the best of the best. At number 1, we have a weapon that single-handedly drove Guardians to madness, grinding the Reckoning for hours on end. A hand cannon that dominated the PvP meta for years and was a workhorse in PvE as well. A hand cannon that is up there with Midnight Coup as one of my favorite weapons of all time. Spare Rations is a 140 RPM hand cannon that came with an incredibly diverse perk pool, which made it desirable for all aspects of the game. It was the ultimate dueling hand cannon due to its incredible sights, perfect 100 recoil direction, and 83 aim assist, which made it one of the most consistent hand cannons the game has ever seen. In Column 3, it could roll Rapid Hit, Snapshot, Auto-Loading, Field Prep, and Subsistence, and in Column 4, it could roll Rampage, Kill Clip, Multi-Kill Clip, Slide Shot, and Moving Target. There were rolls to fit every playstyle, which is why it's one of the community's all-time favorite weapons, and I would personally love to see it return. Well guys, that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated, and comment down below with any of your favorite weapons that I may have missed. Anyways guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!